another SuperCoach video with me, JD. You're joining me for the round 3 review. I did okay myself, 2172, so basically stayed the same rank, small movement up, which I guess is good. At this point, we're just looking to move up. I'm actually a little bit surprised that I didn't move up more. I thought my score was okay for the round. I got 10 out of 10 league wins, which maybe says more about my leagues and my opponents than it does about me. But yeah, a little bit surprised that I didn't move up further. I think my team did okay. We'll jump straight into it. We'll go through my team. I'll try and go through, I think, the rounds again. There's not as much to talk about in terms of trading this week. We can go into that a little bit. I haven't even thought about my own trades yet, which I don't think there really should be any. And maybe this is a place we start, which is, should I be trading this week? And the answer is pretty much no. Between now and we start upgrading with our mid prices, our rookies that kind of hit that peak price, we shouldn't be trading unless we've got long-term injuries. I think really the only trades that I would endorse this week are, if you haven't got Cripps yet, I would get Cripps. He's gone 120 again, 520k, still at a discounted price. This would be the last week to pick him up though. So yeah, definitely would be picking him up if you don't have him. Otherwise, it's going for any rookies on the bubble that are reaching it this week that you haven't already picked up and you've got someone dead in your team. So say like Machado Owens, you might still be holding on to him. Moving him on for someone like Nick Martin, if you haven't picked him up, makes a lot of sense. But yeah, there's like, that's it. Long-term injuries. If you haven't got Cripps, or if you have got dead rookies that you're trading to someone on the field, that's about it. People might think about doing crazy things like Grundy to English or going a week early on Bruce, and I would just avoid all that stuff. I would wait for the extra information an extra week and then make those trades then. I guess maybe the only consideration is if you were fielding Hayes or Dixon at R2, you might want to go early on Bruce, just because you get extra points on field. And it depends on probably what your risk appetite is. I would probably avoid doing that, but yeah, I could understand the appeal of that. So my team, the trades for last week were the exact same as the ones I had in the video. So Ridley down to Hewitt, and then McGovern up to Cripps. McGovern now being out for weeks with a hamstring only helped that. Ridley down to Hewitt was actually a 4-point loss for the week. Ridley played really well in that game. I think in other teams that would have been a 130, 140, but in Essendon it was just a 115. But yeah, getting the 130k, which then funded McGovern up to Cripps, was well worth it. I got 111, 119, even though Ridley put up the 115. So pretty happy with that. And it's actually a bit of a theme for this week. You had a lot of people that traded out premiums. So Ridley, to a lesser extent Whitfield, you had Gorn that was popular, traded out. Steele had been somewhat traded out as well. And there's someone else obviously missing. There's also some of the mid prices like Chapman. But yeah, people were trading them out, and Blackberry was traded out quite heavily, and they bounced back this week and did well, which yeah, hurts if you were in the camp of trading one of those players out, but hopefully the people that you traded to did well. I know Cripps and Hewitt, my targets did, but some of the other popular ones like Heaney wasn't as successful, although if you went down to someone like English, you always had a great week. So yeah, a bit of a mixed bag there, but my trades were good. The only problem for me is I'm already down to 31, but I didn't use a boost last week, which is pretty handy. That should hopefully help me get a leg up during the upgrade season. So down back, yeah, defenders bounce back. Crisp, Whitfield, and Hinge, the only ones that didn't ton up, and they were still, decent scores for the most part, at least better than what we've been dealing with the last couple of weeks. Crisp, I'm still worried about a bit. He's going missing for quarters at a time, which is not a great sign. With Degoe out next week, I'm curious to see how that actually impacts him. Given they're facing West Coast, and we saw what Freo did to them today, then I think Crisp can put in a good score next week, but I still don't love this selection. Short was great again. Looks like he's going to definitely be a top 6 defender. Obviously, he's making good money. Low break even again. Chris should be able to make that break even. And then Jordan Dawson, one of my boys from the preseason, he was already on track for a good score. I think he was on like a 107 or something like that, but then got the kick after the siren, which he put through a 123. That puts him right up there with some of the better defender averages for the year so far with a 106.7. I think he's gone 98, 99, 123. And I think there's more room for him to improve on that as well. So very happy with this pick and looking like he'll be top 6 defender or thereabouts, and an achievable break even as well. Whitfield bled Cashmere this week, 24k, which isn't great. The 96 is an okay score, but to be honest, I don't think he looked. I think he looked okay. He's definitely put on size compared to previous season. I think he's carrying more weight, but he's still running more than anyone else in the team. Like he's leading distance covered, sprint efforts, speed, these types of stats. He's all still right up there in terms of running. Just that the role isn't as good as what we've seen in previous seasons. They were doing stuff like using Ward as the person running out of half back at stoppages. Instead of that just being Whitfield as the only person I really look for that run and carry. And it just limits him because this game was good, but I think he had, 18 or 19 touches. Maybe it was 20. We really need him up around that 25 mark if he's going to average the 110 plus that we were kind of envisioning. And that disposal drop-off is just because the role that he's playing. It's not as good as what we've seen in the past. They're not getting it to him as much as we've seen in the past. So yeah, I mean, this isn't necessarily a failed pick or anything by any means yet, despite the really poor start to the year. It can definitely bring this back. But yeah, hoping it's sooner rather than later and they figure out what's going on there. And then Hewitt was really good. He had a slow start this game as well, which I'm sure anyone else that traded him was like a little bit nervous at it off, but was really good throughout the rest of it. Yeah, I like what he does in that Carlton midfield, and I think they do too. So I'm expecting we continue to see good scores from him throughout the year. Bringing him in and him going up, 55k or whatever it is, doesn't hurt either. And then made the right call on Hinge over McCartan again, which is great. Got that decision right 2 weeks in a row. And with Hinge playing Essendon this week and McCartan playing North, I think this is going to be really tough again. Yeah, both of these could go big. I'll need to have a look at what North's been giving up to intercept defenders over the last couple of weeks to figure out which one of these I want to go to. Yeah, I mean, Essendon's been giving up points and Hinge has been scoring well. So, yeah, both these are great options. I know some people are fielding both and you'd be pretty happy with the matchups I've got this week. SDK, back from that concussion, was okay in defense and then got moved up forward for parts, which isn't necessarily great for SuperCoach scoring unless he snags goals. So I think the most impressive thing about Sam de Koning was he was actually quite good below his knees. For a bigger guy, he was fairly one touch, obviously not like midfielder level, but definitely better compared to other bigs. So yeah, it was pretty impressive, like a little bit understated, but still impressive overall. So he's someone they need to develop, and I hope they keep putting time into him because it looks like he might get there. In the midfield, this is a complete reversal of the first few weeks, or first couple of weeks for McRae, Miller, and Neil, who all went gangbusters the first couple of weeks and then all put in pretty average scores. I still got my captaincy option kind of correct of the three of these, despite, Cripps and some of these other options being better. But yeah, happy I avoided Took Miller with the double tag. Neil, a little bit unfortunate because he had that... was an ankle injury and then managed to play through it and get to a respectable 105, even though it's not amazing. Kind of recovered because that could have been, worse than Took Miller's score if he'd come off at halftime, given how much the lines were up. But yeah, that was all right. And then yeah, Cripps was really good. Talked about him. If you don't have him, I would be looking to get him in this week. Surely there's someone that you can sacrifice to get him. Just the value's way too good. Way too good. What are the break evens like? Even I probably wouldn't trade down one of these, but it's just like you're going to get similar scoring for 150k less. That's pretty attractive. And then Raul had a good week this week after a disappointing last week. Definitely bounced back. His tackling was immense this week, which really helped his score. Felt like it was a game where maybe he could have even pushed more if he was winning a bit more of his own ball, but GWS dominated them pretty badly. So yeah, 103 at his price point is good. How much did he go up? 57k. Yep, and he should still have a low break even, 63. So more money to make, which is great. And then Berry, yeah, one of the more popular traded out options this week. And I thought he could have gone really big in this game, but just the 83 at the end. And now coming into a Geelong matchup, I think if you traded him out, you wouldn't be hurting too bad over this score. Obviously, it's like great for those that are holding because we need it. We need more of these for him to keep making money. So what, 30k this week, another low break even. Definitely need him to string more of these together, but yeah, not hurting non-owners at the moment. And then Horn Francis and Dacos to finish off the mids. So Horn Francis pulled back a little bit this week. This was once again looking like a game that he could have gone bigger, especially with Taron Thomas and LDU out, was getting more CBAs, noticeably more compared to the first 2 weeks. But yeah, just the 67. So hopefully can build on that. But once again, they've got a tough matchup this week in the Swans. So I don't know how likely that is. And then Dacos was really good after that kind of blip in the middle. And as I mentioned with Crisp, they're up against West Coast this week. So I would imagine another big score is coming. And it looks like he's moving more up into the ground as the season progresses, which is what you'd expect for them to push him, I think, more towards the midfield. He looks very talented, very good, which is what you'd expect. Stevens is an interesting one. This like low of a score did not see coming. So he still made 34k and he still has a low break even because he's got that 90 whatever in the system, 95. But yeah, then the couple of weeks after this is going to be pretty tough if he doesn't bounce back. The good thing is the Swans have a pretty soft fixture for the next few weeks. So North in this week, and then there's like Port after that or something. No, they've got North and West Coast, or North West Coast, and then the Hawks. So should be 3 wins, and there should hopefully be a lot of ball for the wingers like Stevens to get. So that I think is a good sign, and probably like it's not someone I'd be looking to trade out early or anything like that. Still lots of money to make. I mean, I don't think he loses his spot. That'd be the only risk if for some reason he was to be dropped. But yeah, it just hurts because it's going to slow his cash generation for the next couple of weeks, and then hopefully he can pick it up again with some of these easier matchups. Ward and McDonald kind of scored similar again. Ward's like a hard one. He's really black and white at the moment. So the first quarter he had 1 touch for like 0 SuperCoach. And the second quarter he had 12 or 13 touches and got up to like 38. But then, managed to finish the game with just 54. So he's getting a fair bit of opportunity in the midfield, like roughly 50% CBAs, which is great. We're just waiting for those games where he strings it all together and really scores what we're looking for. They've got a matchup in St Kilda this week, which they'll be feeling pretty good coming off the game against Richmond. But yeah, another chance. I don't think it's the strongest midfield, so another chance for him to score some points there, hopefully. And then McDonald is just playing a worse role at the moment. So I think he managed to kick another goal this week, which helped his score. But yeah, he's going to be a slow burn. And at least he's got the job security. So yeah. My rucks, so Grundy and Wits. Lots of different ruck strategies at the moment. Some working better than others. Gawn bouncing back was obviously good for holders. You had English going off. I think Wits was really good again. I mean, he's averaging 100 through the first 3, which is what I'm like hoping for Wits. He's making a bit of cash now, still has a relatively low break even. So that's good. And then Dixon surprised. He was kind of playing, what was it, like third tall and then doing some ruck work as well. And I thought he was pretty impressive for the most part. I thought at least a reasonable chance that with Kennedy, Darling, and Nick Nat that Dixon may not get a game. But he held Waterman out of the side today, which I'm not sure like if that's like a COVID recovery thing or what it was, but that was a surprising selection for me that Waterman was held out and Dixon was named. So, maybe they persist with him. I thought I might be getting one of Hayes or Dixon as a donut this week. It might be both. It might be none. Then forwards. So Dunkley was good. Yep. This is what we were expecting from why it was such a must-have. Like, the forward that could easily go 110 average, especially gets the bulk mid-time. They've got the Tigers this week, so I think McRae and Dunkley are both reasonable vice-captain or captain options. I mean, if you're going captain, I'd probably say McRae's safer. If you're going vice-captain, then I think either is fine, depending on what's going on and who you've got is your captain in the wings. Butters copped a knock early, which then just really slowed him for the rest of the game. So his score looks poor for someone that's like played amazing through the first two games. I wouldn't panic or anything like that. I think we'll see him bounce back. It's obviously going to be a bit tough with them playing Melbourne on the Thursday this week. So yeah, maybe another poorer score coming, but I would not be trading him out for any reason. I'd be holding on to him, riding him through those waves, unless for some reason we find out that the knock was actually a much worse injury and he's missing weeks. Cogs, cracking game. He led that team start to finish in a week where GWS really needed to rebound. He did a lot for them and was much more efficient than what you'd normally see in a Canelio game. So yeah, 150 from him, we take that. He's obviously going right up in the cash gen, so 77k, which, my screen set up poorly, so I just realized you guys can't see the cash gen numbers I'm referring to. Sorry. So yeah, up 77k and still has a negative 48 break even, but most importantly, he's looking like he could be a forward keeper. And this is pretty important because for my team, I could have 5 keepers down defense already, 4 in the midfield, that's 9. Grundy's 10, and then 3 in the forwards make 13. So all the talk about us starting like 11 keeper teams this year, we might actually be at 13, which is pretty handy because if we're already at 13 keepers and we have 31 trades, does mean we can get pretty aggressive and start trading pretty early, using these boosts to upgrade and potentially still having trades left at the end. So obviously there's a lot that can happen between now and then when it comes to injuries, and maybe some of these players don't end up being keepers. But yeah, this is optimistic science, and maybe being aggressive this year is going to pan out quite nicely. Cherry was good. I know a lot of people traded him in this week. He would have made over 70k as well and still have a ridiculously low break even. Against the Swans this week, which typically I would have thought pretty bad matchup just given Hickey's quite a good ruck. But he went off in the second half, which kind of let English go off the chain with a knee problem, and he's obviously had knee problems in the past. So it's a bit of a wait and see what the actual issue or injury is with Hickey and whether he gets up. If he doesn't get up, Cherry could go for another big score this week against the Swans, because I mean their backup ruck's like Amadi, like not so good. They've got who was it, the guy from Port that they took? Well, I can't remember his name. Laddams, who could come in, and there's another like ruck I'm missing as well, but I don't think any of these are very impressive. So Cherry could have a really nice week this week. And then the forward line, I mean, I got this wrong when it came to. This was the only decision I really got wrong. Like I got my captain right. Obviously didn't have Stevens or Ward or anyone else in the field. And I got Hinge over McCartan. But yeah, Martin, I had to pick 2 of these rookies to field. And I mean, Martin was the easy one for me. Hayes, I just didn't think was a great choice with Ryder and Marshall on the side. And like, yeah, he didn't score amazingly this week. So really, I was probably only considering between these two. So missing out on 21 points is like not ideal, but not the end of the world. It's just some people have like a Brody or something in this spot, which is, you know, that's a pretty big point loss. I had this week 50 something points against people that were in that boat. And then, yeah, like Durden was never really in consideration. They played Gold Coast this week, which is like pretty interesting. I mean, if I could loophole, then Martin's playing this week against the Crows. I mean, Rochelle might play this week just because they're playing the Dons. Hayes will come down to, firstly, whether he gets named and what they're doing with Ryder and Marshall. If one of Ryder or Marshall get dropped, I'd play him over Rochelle. Otherwise, I might just run this back and back Rochelle in to go decent against Essendon, whose small defender stocks aren't exactly amazing. Actually, none of our defender stocks are exactly amazing at the moment. Otherwise, Durden against the Gold Coast could be an interesting one. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, this is my team. Trades this week. I can't see myself doing any. I'd love to have English in the team. But yeah, that's not going to be happening. So let's go into... Oh, you don't want to look at my fantasy team, do you? Surely not. No. So let's get into... Hold on. All right. Game by game, let's go. We're going to try and rapid fire this because SuperCoach opened a little bit later than ideal. All right, so we've already talked about this game a fair bit, but Dogs beat the Swans in what was a pretty good game. Swans, I guess, a little bit flat after Buddy's 1000th goal last week. English was actually getting, I think, pretty handily beaten by Hickey in the ruck. Hickey was at 110 or something just after at halftime, but that injury took him down and it just gave English free rein, where English was kind of matching Hickey with around the ground work before, and they were both scored amazingly through that aspect. Hickey was dominating the ruck work. As soon as Hickey went off and Amadi was the one that was taking a lot of that, English was able to win more hit-outs, get more hit-outs to advantage, and what probably would have been like a 120 ended up being a 150 instead. So great game from English, and for his owners, very rough for those of us that don't have him, but he's looking like a top 6 forward at the moment. Plus, he's got the DPP, which is obviously really handy. As long as they continue to play him as the number one ruck, and games like this, I think is going to help Bevo back him in as the number one. Danica, we talked about, was good. Bont played okay. I mean, he must be leaking money. And then Treloar had another good game as well. I think he'd be up there in terms of forward scorers at the moment, but someone that I've avoided due to his hamstring history. And I just think we're going to get enough other options at the moment that Treloar's not probably someone you're going to need to consider. McRae, we already touched on, a bit of a poor game, but he'll bounce back. I think, they moved him onto the wing for the final quarter, which just killed his scoring. If there's any more moves like that, or like Bevo starts putting him out there more and more, then McRae is actually someone we probably need to trade out of before he leaks too much money. But hopefully it's just a one-off like he did in the granny. And then no one else really need to talk about on the dog side. I mean, for the very small portion of Dale owners, this is probably about the scores you're expecting, and it hurts. Lloyd was good again. I kind of like he shot up out of nowhere. This is the second week in a row where Lloyd hasn't done a bunch, but he's ended up on a good score. I noticed him moving up to stoppages a lot, so they really are trying to push him out of defence and get him up into that wing role, and I think that's partly because Blakey's been quite good down back, not only being able to handle the kickouts, but exit out of defence and be a part of those changes, so kind of fill that role that Lloyd, fill that absence that Lloyd would be creating by moving up to the wing. So, I don't know what this means for the season ahead. If Lloyd's scores continue to do well or if it kind of regresses a little bit, what happens there. But, so far, so good. And then Heaney, a little bit of a disappointing score, especially given that a lot of people traded him in this week. But I would not panic whatsoever. As I mentioned, their fixture coming up is really soft from this point for the next at least handful of games. So I would expect to see some big Heaney scores back, even though they're continuing to park him forward while Papley's out. They should be feeding him for goals. And then McCartan and Stevens we already talked about. The only other player of relevance really is Mills, and it's just worth noting that 70 is going to drop him in price and create a big break even. So this could be someone we're looking at as potentially one of our first upgraders in the midfield, depending on what else shakes out. Put him on your watch list. Melbourne Essendon, pretty disappointing game for an Essendon fan again. We are ranked 18th in a number of stats at the moment, like tackles inside 50s, contested possessions, just things that help you win AFL games. But I guess we took a small step forward in the sense that we probably looked slightly better than we have the last 2 weeks again, and we were slightly more competitive again. But really Melbourne's inaccuracy kind of in the first part of the game when they were dominating us helped flatter us a little bit when it came to score and when we finished up. So the Elder Brayshaw absolutely destroyed SuperCoach scoring. He had, I think, over 10 marks, maybe it was even more. He shot up massively in price, but he dropped 60 and 70 or something in the first couple of weeks. He's not really relevant, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Oliver posted a really good score. Gorn did well, 117 for holders is great. And then Petrarca was a surprising one, whose score wasn't as good, but he had the strapped up knee and just something looked a little bit off about him. I think my advice in the live stream, and maybe even definitely on the FTTV pod as well, was that if you have a Melbourne player, then this is a game you can put a vice captain on. So I know a few people that had Oliver, which is pretty unique ownership, I guess, against amongst more serious SuperCoach players. Yeah, he's a little bit unique. So anyone that got the 146 was great, especially in a week where a lot of other popular captain options, like a Took Miller, for example, didn't work out as well. Or even Neil, right? It's still a 40-point game, which is nice. It's handy. Oh, Bowie. No, Bowie. I'm going to get that name right eventually. So Bowie, 89. This is really good for those that picked him up, and it really hurts for those that didn't, like me. Look, 62K up. Still has a negative 46 break even. So yeah, he's going to make another 50, 60K this week, depending on how he scores. Looked really good. I mean, once again, it was against Essendon though, but his ability to move up and kind of sit loose or sit behind the contest and get fed through that in a game where Melbourne really had a lot of ascendancy in the midfield, just led to some great scoring, got some nice intercepts as well. So, yeah, for non-owners, this was the score that we weren't hoping to see because it just means that the likelihood that he makes enough cash and pans out as a pick is so much higher. And if you did take the risk on Bowie, then yeah, you'd be really ecstatic seeing that score. Uh, Anyone else worth mentioning? I don't think on the Melbourne side and on the Essendon side. Look, like just broadly, Essendon's played Melbourne, Geelong, and Brisbane, so three of the top four from last year. Our fixture is still pretty hard from here, but at least it's not that bad. So if you had Essendon players like Parrish, who is a somewhat popular pod, my advice would be to hold and see how they go. Wouldn't be trading them out now. Ridley at 115. As I kind of said earlier, I think in other teams this score would have been even better. My concern for him is still the role. So Ridley has looked good, and I think he looked good definitely last week. No one kind of really good in the first week, but he's relying so much on intercepts, spoils, contested marks. It's really hard for that to be sustainable at this level. You need to balance it out with kick-ins, which he's getting enough of, and then just like general possessions from around the ground. And you'll see someone like Stewart is quite a good example of this, where he doesn't necessarily get as many kick-ins as someone like Ridley might, but he gets a lot of kick to kick around the ground. And Essendon's game plan just isn't allowing for that at the moment. I'm not seeing enough of that in Ridley, and that's why I say in other teams, this could have been a 130, 140 if he was getting some of those cheap kicks and marks during the back half. Just wasn't there. And I'm really worried something like this 115, is closer to a ceiling game for Ridley rather than the average game you get for Ridley. Maybe I'm wrong. I kind of hope that I'm wrong. But yeah, Holder's definitely got paid back a little bit this week with a 115 following up his 103 last week. So two decent scores after the first week's poor score of a 60. And then, yeah, Martin was good again. Just has a knack for finding the ball. He's still 102K, negative 124 break even. Going to go up 100K. If you don't have him, get him. Surely you've got someone underperforming or whatever it may be that you can ditch, because that's, yeah. I mean, someone like Stevens, he might go past in 1 week on cash gen, depending on how he scores. And then no one else really worth noting. I mean, Wayne Gadeen was the debutant, but 37 small forward. I don't think he's going to be a relevant one for any of us. I say debutant, but he actually wasn't. He played as a sub the week before, just never got activated. All right, Dawson and Hinge already talked about, both great. Led came back, obviously, off the broken hand, 93. So we'll just monitor him. He's also someone that if he gets cheap enough with a slow start, could be an early upgrade option, much like Mills. So the two top defenders from last year now in our midfield, maybe. Keys continue to put out good scores as well. I guess somewhat helped by the fact that Sloan wasn't in the team. So let's see if he continues it with Laird and Sloan both back. Dawson, yeah, so good. I'm just going to keep mentioning Dawson. Rochelle, a little bit unfortunate. He got really hurt by a 50-meter against towards the end of the game, where he lost like 14 points for it just because the game was on the line. It was close, even though it didn't result in a goal, which is annoying because if this score was like a 50, you know, it's not terrible, but it's fine. But a 36 does really hurt his cash gen for the next couple of weeks. So much like what we talked about with Durden in the past, these small forwards, you've got to ride them through the ups and downs. And it's generally why you don't want to be fielding them, because it's hard to predict when you get the 30, when you're going to get the 70. But Rochelle, I definitely believe, has a couple of those bigger games in him again, and that'll get the cash generation rolling. For those that held Mead, really good for you guys. So nerves of steel, I guess. It was a bit hard because he got played as the sub, which gave him a really poor score. Where is it? He had 52 in round one, and then the thing's not showing me, but it was a terrible score. And 18 playing the sub. So yeah, a bit hard to play him because it's just like, what's his job security out, whatever it may be. But then yeah, come out this week, it looked good with as well with the 72. So I think he might have earned himself some more games, or 78. I think he might have earned himself some more games, despite the close loss and maybe some changes needing to happen. But yeah, I thought Mead looked good. I don't think there's anything else really relevant to discuss apart from, yeah, Butters we already touched on. McIntyre, which is one that I was looking for as a rookie in the preseason, got a game, I think was all right, but I'm not sure he holds his spot. And then Skinner got injured, so waiting to see what the news is on that. Is that something that he can get up from in a week, or is he actually going to miss time? Because some people are looking to trade down or did trade down to him this week. I think he was at least somewhat popular as a trading option. Oh, it doesn't tell me what the traded in was here. I'm sure it does somewhere. I just don't know how to use the tools well enough. Yeah. Okay, so and then there was someone else, right? Mays or Hayes? No, Mays. It's not Mays. It's Hayes. But Hayes didn't get a game. Okay, Mays means nothing. All right. Giants against Gold Coast. Gold Coast were bad and got beaten badly, and the scoreline flattered them. They were much worse than this. Taranto's continue to put out big games. I mean, what's he averaging? Jeez. As someone that we thought might get hurt a little bit by playing forward, he's actually done well so far. 106. Man, people that picked him will be pretty happy with that, despite how strong some of the other forward options have been. I mean, it's a respectable score. I haven't refreshed this. Come on. I mean, it's right up there with these three. Be close to Heaney, close to English. So yeah, Toronto's been a good pick so far. Whittrell, Cogs we all talked about. Toronto was good. Bruce is the big one. So a player that a lot of people were looking for as a either R2 or R3 option in the preseason. Carries a lot of risk with him, but he came out and did really well as the number one ruck for GWS. So not someone I would look to bring in this format this week. I would wait and see another game, make sure he gets through it, given his injury history, and that Cameron's not doing weird stuff with resting rucks or wanting to play two or whatever it may be. So yeah, I'd try and hold out this week, but it looks like after next week, if he plays well again, 80 plus, whatever it may be, he's someone that we're going to need to get in as a cash cow. He's 200K. What is it? 204, 700. Look, I know like early, we've already got some people trading him in, but yeah, this is someone that can potentially make a lot of money for us and also be a good on-field option for those that are playing someone worse than him at the moment, like a Hayes or a Dixon. But yeah, for someone like me with Wits, it could also be just good backup. So yeah, Bruce is one to put on the watch lists if he wasn't already on your watch list. Tavies is one that people were obviously getting a little bit excited about, but yeah, just the 26 he's dropped off. His roles just leads to be inconsistent, especially in games where Gold Coast kind of get crushed. Took got the double tag. I guess like Took will be fine. Took will bounce back, right? So I wouldn't worry about that. But it does mean a couple of things. One, Took's maybe a little bit more susceptible to a tag than we thought. And then secondly, GWS are potentially going to tag other people. It worked for them really effectively this game. They have, I think, GWS this week. Sorry, they are GWS. Oh, tired. They have Fremantle this week, and we saw Brayshaw get effectively tagged for a half, which we'll talk a little bit about. But yeah, I think that means tag might be coming his way this week with De Boer and Ash being used to kind of rotate, which was really interesting. I've never seen a double tag before, but they're one of the few lists that has one tag, let alone two people that are able to tag, competently. Anyone else worth talking about? Oh, they've got like a couple of cheaper players. So like Peatling, he's 242k but scored like a 40 or whatever. So it's not going to be relevant. He's playing forward primarily. And then Steen, who's 176k. He scored okay, 64. So wait and see what happens next week. especially with Davis potentially being out. I think his job security might be okay, but I don't think it's likely we're going to have someone that we need to downgrade, as he's on the bubble in a week's time. So yeah, one to keep an eye out for, but probably not going to end up being relevant just because of circumstance. Kelly dropped to 81. Once again, someone you can kind of just add on to the watch list of like, if these players get cheap. Just think it's quite hard now because they've got other midfielders that are taking points off him. Green is obviously the one that's been a big standout here. He's done 3 100s through the first 3, averaging 139. This is a pretty crazy mid-pricer here, and he's actually there's parallels to Cripps in the sense that his average is very similar. He's still priced at 502k. Is this someone that's a must-have this week? It might be something we talk about in the podcast. I guess the difference between Cripps and Green on the surface is Cripps has done it before. Well, Green's a bit of a breakout, and he still plays Leon Cameron. But yeah, very interesting here. Very interesting. Looks like some people trading him in. Understandable. All right, Collingwood, Geelong. This is obviously a cracking game just in the sense that Collingwood was so far ahead and then fumbled the bag pretty badly. I think they got a little bit ahead of themselves, which, they've got a lot of young players in there. But you would have thought some of the old heads would have kind of helped them stay in check, but is what it is. All right, from a SuperCoach perspective, Pendles is actually scoring well, so maybe he does become a defender option when he gets DPP, which should definitely be on the cards. 105 average, which, generally it's good enough for a defender. But yeah, we'll wait and see a few more weeks before we make any more, any decisions on that. Stewart, he's gone 103, 103, 104. Yeah, just a defender I wish I had. Looks like he's going to be very safe, very reliable, very consistent. So if he does get cheap at some point, I'll look to bring him in. But I'm obviously not owning him at the moment is killing me either. So, yep. And then, so Lipinski was okay. I think he's a little bit on a watch for does he get forward status. He's right around the 30-35% mark now, but might get tipped the other way with no Degoe next week. Might get more mid-time. I think that should also help Chris, as we kind of talked about, and potentially Dacos gets more mid-time as well. Ginnivan, I know some people traded in. I warned you not to, just because, small forward in a Collingwood team, I don't think it's going to continue to win as many games as convincingly as they were, and that's just going to lead to inconsistency. With that said, West Coast this week, said it like 4 times already. So yes, potentially some good scores out of that. And then Reef McInnes is one to point out as well, someone that we were looking at pre-season as potentially someone on our bench, 123k, put up a 60 this week. So unfortunately going to be a little bit like the others, which is if he does make the bubble next week, are we really in a place where we're ready to start downgrading and upgrading and using some of these people on the bubble? And I think it's unlikely that we are, but yeah, just one to keep in the back of your head. And then anyone else in danger? Just had an average game. Don't think he's too relevant. DeConning we talked about. Really not much here. For the few people that picked Holmes as a mid-pricer, he scored all right this week after just an 18 last week. But yeah, I can't imagine too many that picked him, held on to him. Brisbane North, this is a demolition job by Brisbane. North sent someone to Neil early. I think it was Turner, and Neil was still crushing them right up until he was like 40 at quarter time, right up until he had that ankle problem. Fought through it and managed to get a 105. But this could have been a massive game had it not been for that little injury hiccup. So hopefully everything's fine. And given that he played out the game, you'd imagine that it would be. Bailey had a good game, but it was demolition, so he got to kick a fair few goals. I wouldn't expect this every week from him. But yeah, I know some people traded him out this week and just unfortunate timing. But yeah, I wouldn't expect too many more of these. Barrios having for a bigger score, but it is what it is. No one else really relevant. Cam Rayner, laugh. On the north side, Cherry talked about Hall was a surprising one. So Brisbane put up 18 behinds, and I think Hall must have had something like 8 to 10 kick-ins, and still only just the 70, and that's including a goal that he kicked in the first quarter as well. So this is a surprisingly low score, and really handy for non-owners. Drops him in price, actually puts a pretty reasonable break even here, which it's not out of range of him, to be honest. But does help, yeah, because he was really off to a flying start and a very popular trading option this week. So the 107 just brings him in line with, someone like a Dawson after the first 3 weeks. And he's not going to get out of price range too drastically. So one that we could actually bring in as part of our first upgrades, depending on how the next couple of weeks go. Horn Francis, already mentioned at the top. Zeeble had a poor game. It's actually one of the things with Hall as well. It wasn't just Hall. Hall, Zeeble, and McDonald all had poor games, which is quite surprising given how much ball lived in their back half. But if you didn't guess already, this kills the Luke McDonald becoming a premium defender dream this year for 350k. I just don't think that's likely given what we saw this week. And anyone that took the risk on that, I don't know what you were doing. With better options in the midfield, so. Yep. All right. Blues versus Hawks. Blues tried to lose this. They tried pretty hardly, but managed to get over the line in the end. They had a lot of their top guys kind of stand up in this game. So Cripps early, but then Walsh, Doherty, and Hewitt all later in the game all did really good. Williams and Newman, Doherty, Williams, and Newman all did really well off half back, which, given Sard wasn't there, definitely something that helped them over the line. Their tools were really impressive in this game, but both Owies and Durden, I think, got involved a lot more. Chera, a bit of a butcher by foot, but I thought he was okay. I think maybe I'm just misremembering wrong because it was probably the player I was least fixated on their midfield, but I thought his game was better than a 68. And then we've mentioned there's a couple of these guys that are rookie priced. So Boyd, 123k defender, decent foot skills, but just 36. So yeah, we've already covered a couple of options that are more likely to be better once they hit the bubble next week, but we can obviously see another game and reassess. And then on the Hawk side, Jath was massive. A lot of the best parts of what we saw from him last year kind of were at the forefront of this game with his intercept marking and some of his dash off halfback. Sicily had his moments, and he was, I think, pretty average through the first 3 quarters from a fantasy SuperCoach perspective. But in the fourth he turned it on, he had something like a over 50-point dream team or fantasy fourth quarter, which is obviously massive, and that translated to SuperCoach as well, given that the game got on the line. So a bit of scaling to go there. So yeah, this could have been quite a poor game, but for owners, you got the 105, which is nice. I still can't see Sicily being a keeper and someone that you're going to have to trade out opportunistically at some point throughout the year once he's made a little bit of cash. Titch had a pretty average game again. Look, this is someone that you can add to your watch list just because he's going to be really cheap. So yeah, he's just averaging just the 82 though through the first 3 games, yet to ton up or anything like that. The groin issue that he had in the preseason, it looks like that's really hampering him, and I think it's that plus they're not as reliant on him as they have been in other years. They're trying to get other talent through there, despite the fact Titch is still playing lots of mid-time, and this is just, he's not a premium at the moment. If you haven't already got off him, I would get off him now. Cripps, I'd go to Green. There's lots of options. If you didn't have Neil, I'd go to Neil. So, definitely get off him for the few that might have him. And then, we can reassess maybe after the buys. We see what happens last year where it really picked up and took off again. If he gets cheap enough and we're desperate for a midfield upgrade option, then maybe he gets a look in there. But we'd still be waiting for signs he could turn around. And then, Ward and McDonald we talked about. And McGuinness got a third game, which is a little bit surprising, but just the 29. So for the few that held on to him or picked him, which was a bit crazy given what else was happening in the team, it hasn't really worked out, I don't think. But, there's always more time with these rookies. Could still make money. Tigers, Richmond, a bit of a surprise here. I thought once Richmond kind of started to control the game a bit more in the second and third quarter, they'd walk away with this. And then, the Saints came back in a big way. King had another massive quarter to help put the team on his back. I think they just can't rely on too many of those because, when the game's on the line, surely teams are going to figure out just like triple team King, and then that's about it. But yeah, was really impressed by Steele. So those that held saw a bounce back game from him. I thought he looked good start to finish, and in the fourth quarter, he stood up. But I thought he was one of the players that actually had like genuine four-quarter performance from St Kilda, which is what you want from your captain and also from someone in your SuperCoach side. So yeah, really promising signs there. Still not his best, but yeah, a much closer than what we saw in the opening 2 weeks. Gresham was good, and once again, like that's a pick that should not be working this well. But yeah, to those who picked him, great. And then Sinclair is one that's popped up on a lot of people's radars last week because he'd gone up to 70% CBAs. Seemed to get that again this week. He was in the without getting the CBA data yet. He was in the midfield a lot again. He's put up 3 100s in a row. He's averaging 110. He's at 492, so actually still like somewhat cheaper. It's probably a good thing that I can't sideways Whitfield to him this week because that'd be tempting. But yeah, one to have a look at just because he's getting those CBAs and he's making use of them, unlike Crisp. So yeah, surprising. I don't know if he can keep it up. He's like in his 8th year or something, and it's a bit like Crisp last year when you have like these 8th year, 9th year defenders having a breakout in the midfield. It's a little bit of a head scratcher. And then, yeah, the other big talking point on the Saints side was the ruck situation. So Marshall, Hayes, and Ryder. I don't think this worked particularly well, and none of them did particularly well. Hayes kind of had the rough end of the stick because he wasn't really rucking. He was just playing forward, and I thought he did that okay enough. He competed well, contested well when it was in his area, despite it not being his best game. He kicked a goal, which was nice. And then, yeah, Marshall looks like there's something going on with him. If you have him, I think he is actually someone you could trade. Maybe even like risking going down to Bruce early. But if you don't have some of the other must-haves we kind of talked about, then Marshall out for those makes a lot of sense, I would say. And then, yeah, Ryder, I mean, he's just coming back and had lots of time off with his various issues. So a little bit of rust expected, but yeah, I don't know. I think they might make a change here this week, which gives me some worry for Hayes. And then Wangini Malira, so he played his second game. So 53 first, 41 second on the bubble this week, but not really someone that's relevant. And on the Tiger side, yeah, we talked about Short already again, was good. I mean, gets the kickouts, loves running behind for a cheap touch as well. Boots it long. This is all like really SuperCoach friendly stuff. As with tradition with the Tigers, no one else is really SuperCoach relevant. Gibkiss is obviously the rookie that a lot of people have. Ralph Smith didn't really back up last week as well. But yeah, so just on Gibkiss, so made 30k this week, break even of 8. So yeah, some people, or actually a lot of people have him. He's just a slow burn. He's going to make some money. You're gonna have to hope that he gets to 80 at some point. That really helps with the cash generation. But this by no means is bad. He's just going to keep ticking away. Looks like the job security is pretty good. So I don't think you can be too upset with that. And then last game of the round was the derby between West Coast and Fremantle, which was an absolute fizzer. Fremantle pretty much crushed them from start to finish. The big talking point here was that there was a tag sent from Nelson onto Brayshaw for the first half and did a really good job constricting him. I think he was, I don't know, maybe 20, 24 Supercoach at halftime, at which point they dropped it. And then Brayshaw went on to have over 20 touches and I think ended up being their leading disposal getter, which is why he was able to salvage a 96, even though there was no scaling on the line at that point in the game anymore. So yeah, it's as we kind of mentioned with GWS, they've got them this week. It's shown that he's susceptible to it. So for those that do have Brayshaw in this format, be careful. Who else? So like McGovern has gone 3 100s in a row and is averaging 120, which is crazy. 128, 115, and a score in the middle is a 117. So yeah, 3 big games in a row, which I guess makes sense a little bit just because he's been able to play them all. And they've had a lot of the ball down their back half. But yeah, don't expect it to keep up or anything like that. Just like an odd quirk. Nick Nat had a good bounce back game for the few that had him. Naish has continued to be a really good rookie, which is just kind of hard to predict. But yeah, he's gone up 50k this week, up to 240k, still negative 21 break even. So a bit of a miss that we don't have him, but I think there's very few that do. So I wouldn't beat yourself up too much about it. Hoff did all right, a 40. It's nothing to write home about. I still think there's worries that he gets dropped. He's on the bubble this week, but yeah, I guess it just depends on what's happening with their list, their injuries, COVID, who's in, who's out, these types of things. And then no one else really that relevant to talk about on this side. On the Freo side, so outside of Brayshaw, the big talking point is Brodie. So something I didn't see happening this week, which is Brodie played more than 80% game time. So the first couple of weeks he played like 70 and 80 minutes. This week he played over 100, which, yeah, I mean, it helped his score a little bit just because if he was at this scoring pace but was spent more time on the bench, it wouldn't have been anywhere near a 90. He led contested possessions for them. Once again, looked really good at stoppages. Outside of that, defensive running, spread, kind of non-existent. So just up to Freo if they want to keep making those trade-offs. But given that there's no Fife, there's no Mundy, Tucker got concussed. Erasmus looks good, and like O'Driscoll's maybe not really ready. So there's not much competition for Brodie. So I think he's going to keep getting games. Oh, Sarong obviously had the knee issue as well, the knee setback. So it's one of those things where it's like if they had Sarong, Mundy, and Fife, do I think Brodie's getting a game? Probably not. But in lieu of those, he seems really good depth, and it looks like he's got continued to have job security just because everyone else is falling down around him. So owners, like it really hurts not owning him. So yeah, 60K, negative 23 break even. He's going to keep going up and up. And I would much rather field him over Shelley for each week at the moment. They have, who are they playing this week? GWS. Oh, yeah, I already talked about this with the tagging, right? So yeah, like he should be pretty good. If they go to the tag, you'd expect more Brodie, these types of things. So yeah, great for owners. Great for owners. Would I do Berry down to Brodie this week? No, surely not. Nah, it's too risky. Too risky. I'm just playing. Meek put in another good score, and he's actually like risen up in cash a fair bit as well. But this was expected with no Darcy. Given Darcy Smith to be back this week, I don't think he's going to keep anything like that up. Ryan kind of came back to earth a little bit after his massive score last week. Erasmus is one for the watch lists, 58. Got a fair bit of mid-time, but yeah, it's just a bit hard to know with job security with all the other moving pieces in Freo's midfield with injuries. And then O'Driscoll obviously started as the sub last week and kicked a goal and managed to kick another goal this week. He was pretty average early, but then built into it as the game went on, which is maybe a little bit of a worrying concern just given the game was dead at that point. But yeah, I think they'll give him more games throughout the year. I just don't know on a week-to-week basis what his job security is like. And I think that's everyone. So yeah, as I kind of mentioned, I'm not planning to trade this week. Holding on to the trades, holding on to the boosts, getting ready as all the players kind of build that cash, make a bit of bank, and then we will look to upgrade from there. I don't recommend you trade outside of the situations I kind of mentioned a few times throughout this video. I'm sure there's a couple other niche ones, but hopefully the advice I've given is good for the broad base. Generally, just don't trade at this point unless you've really missed some obvious ones like Nick Martin, Cripps, whatever it may be. But yeah, that's everything for this week. Let me know how you went, how you're traveling. If you are considering trading, what they are this week. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.